You mentioned that the film's anchored to 4 quintessential American communities. How did you pick those communities?
You know, I'd like to just tell you that it was a dart on the map, and it's sort of like that. We wanted a northeast town, we wanted a southern town, we wanted a western town, we wanted a midwestern town, and we got them. And it could be any town. It could have been your hometown, it could have been anybody's hometown. And what it was just a discipline. We were just going to go into these towns, advertise our existence by talking to the local newspaper, do a few feature stories on us, go into the libraries, into the archives, into the veterans groups, all the other associations, and just find whoever came up to us. That's what we were going to accept. And get to know their stories, delve into their personal archives, match it with a large public archive that we're sort of familiar with, and then try to tell a story, try to weave it all together into a complicated tapestry.
You even had quite an outreach campaign, didn't you, to find undiscovered footage?
We spent years in the depths and the bowels of the National Archives and other archives because too often we have in our business an expression called B-roll. Well, where somebody's talking, you just run some footage and sort of illustrate it. And I got the feeling that so much of what I saw on cable channels about the Second World War was like B-roll. It wasn't immediate. It was just sort of place marking. It was just sort of marching along, vamping, we say in music. And it just didn't appeal to me. We wanted to give an experience. We wanted to be able to answer the question that animated it. What was it like to be in that war? And that meant we had to get footage that hadn't been seen. We had to find out the ordinary moments when the soldiers are giving each other shaves and haircuts and laughing and playing. We had to bring the sound effects up. All the footage is silent. We had to add the effects to give the reality of it. And we had to get out of the way. We didn't want to be distracted by strategy and armaments and everything Nazi. You know, they call the Hitler channel is the History Channel because it's so fascinated with that. And we just wanted to tell a different kind of story. And I think we have. And it's very intimate. It's very personal. It's very emotional. And it's for everyone. It's not just for veterans and their wives and survivors. It's for their children, it's for their grandchildren, and indeed their great-grandchildren, because this is the biggest cataclysm in human history, and if you don't have a rudimentary knowledge of it and understand the sacrifice of these brave men, then you really can't call yourself an American. You have to know what took place in this amazing, transformative moment called the Second World War.
Who are some of the people we're going to meet in this film?
You know, they're going to meet just ordinary folks. They're going to be kids that, you know, lost a brother in a training mission and becomes a ball turret gunner. You're going to meet a guy who just is a hail fellow, well meant, from Sacramento, who just thinks he's just fighting for himself and his buddies. He doesn't believe in the propaganda of the Why We Fight films. And then when he stumbles upon a concentration camp in the last episode, he understands why he was fighting. You're going to find housewives waiting at home. You're going to find little kids. We have 3 little kids. One of them was 6 to 10 in Laverne, Minnesota, collecting scrap, doing his part. Another was 8 to 12 in Sacramento, going to the movies, watching John Wayne and having a good time, and then having a friend of his lose a father to a submarine attack. There's a girl from Sacramento Valley who was in Manila and got captured by the Japanese with her family and was interned for the whole war, suffering incredible starvation and beatings at the hand of the Japanese. I mean, we have, you know, a cross-section of America. We weren't interested in what their ethnic thing was, with the exception of the Japanese Americans and to a lesser extent African Americans, who had really different, distinct, hypocritical experiences in the Army. But everybody else, we were looking for certain combat experiences. We land at the Bulge, you're here at Anzio, you're there in North Africa, or you're on Peleliu or Iwo Jima, and just followed their stories.
As people told you their stories, did you sense, was it cathartic for them to tell you the stories? Oh,
very much so. I mean, some people, I have to say, who had been speaking since the war about it, and I can't say we're comfortable. There was one fellow who clearly had been talking about everything, but his cheeks still twitched, his hands still shook a little bit. It was still a painful thing. He still clearly had nightmares that disturbed his sleep every night. Some people hadn't spoken at all. And we'd start the camera and they just burst into tears, and I honor them. They're not in our film. They didn't realize they couldn't speak. Some told us in advance, I can't talk about it. Their family would say, all he tells about is the funny stuff, and that's the way they sometimes abolish the horror of what they've seen. But a few people began to speak and tell us. Sometimes the wife or the son would say, Pop, you never told us that. And very, dramatic testimony about what they did, and seeing friends die and dealing out death and nearly dying themselves. Horrible, horrible stories that in their aggregate you begin to realize, what was I doing when I was 18, 19 years old.
Oh, exactly.
You know, and it makes you really think about questions of sacrifice, about duty, of the unity, the special unity we in the United States had back then. It's something that we can only hope to try to duplicate now.